Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Guys Talking Sports. It's our college football show edition, and both South Carolina and Clemson are about as dead as our friend Landry here. We got a very bad team, and then we got an even worse team. Let's just start with the worst team, which is the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Wait, I thought that would be Clemson.
I wish it was, but unfortunately, it's the South Carolina Gamecocks who fall to Missouri 34-12. They're 2-5 on the season, and I think the last time I felt this way about a team was probably 2020 during the COVID season, where I'm just not emotionally invested in them anymore.
Yeah.
It literally didn't bother me during the game how bad we were playing, so much so to the fact that I didn't even watch the second half. I went around on the golf cart with the kids, showed them the Halloween lights.
Yeah.
I just am not going to waste my time on a team that doesn't care to try and put a good product on the field.
If we're going to watch something spooky, I would rather it be Halloween decorations than our football team. I just think it's just not a good season, and it's on all fronts, health wise, injury wise, coaching wise, player wise. And, you always have that mentality of, somebody gets hurt, next man up. Well, unfortunately, the majority of our players that would be next man up are true freshmen and haven't really played. And I don't care how good you are recruited or highly recruited you are out of high school. There's a big difference in the competition. Some players just aren't ready. Right. But, like I said, it's getting them game reps. And I just feel like it's been a collection of everything. And also, man, we just have a very, very, very tough schedule, and there's really no down week in terms of competition that you can maybe try to get some momentum going, and the schedule's not getting any easier. It's not.
I think the worst part for me is that Beamer took over a dismal program. Yeah, absolutely. He took over a 3-win team. Mm-hmm. His first season gets him to a bowl game. Yeah, which was a overachievement of overachievements.
You can say his first 2 seasons were overachievements.
Right, and then last year was definitely an overachievement, especially, with the game against Tennessee and then the game against Clemson. And then, unfortunately, you lost the bowl game, but they played extremely well. So I think what's making this year so tough for me is the fact that we had so much hope coming out of last year. You had those amazing wins at the end of the year. Like I said, the bowl game, they played well. You took a lot of positives from it, even though you lost. Yeah. You had a great recruiting class. You pick up, Nyck Harbor, one of the top recruits in the nation during this time period. Yeah. All accounts where you were having a great spring. Rattler was looking like Rattler, which he is. I think that is the only bright spot of this season is that Rattler is what was always promised. Unfortunately for him, the results in the win-loss column aren't coming. As bad as our offensive line is, I think I saw someone say on Twitter that it's actually helping Rattler as far as his draft status because they're seeing him outside the pocket, what he can do under pressure, having to move out, and not just being able to throw in a clean pocket. They're seeing what he can. So personally for him, he's trending up as the team is snowballing down.
And I think last season especially, we had a lot of I wouldn't say senior leadership, but we had a lot of senior players that played. We had to replace 2 DBs, two starting DBs. Had to replace a bulk of the offensive line. The ones we had coming back that had experience are hurt now. Exactly. Got our top 3 receivers are doubtful for this weekend. Right. There's really not a whole lot we can do, and I don't know if that's just a thing of freak accidents happen. Is it on the strength staff? Because I swear, man, it feels like for the past half decade we always have injury issues.
I think some of it could be strength and conditioning, and also some of it is just the players you see getting hurt are the players that are having to be constantly fed the ball. Xavier Legette is being constantly thrown to. And then on top of that, the play that he gets hurt on is you have him returning kicks for whatever reason. That makes no sense to me. Because 9 times out of 10, let's just take the, touchback. Yeah. Something, let it go out the end zone, something like that. And, stick anybody back there. Yeah. To
the
return
guy
the
we
kicks.
did was he's hurt too, Ahmarrean Brown. It's DK Joyner. And I know, especially with Pete Limbo's, I guess, coaching philosophy, they want and even Beamers, they want the athletes out there on special teams. And I get it. Like you want them out there.
I get it, but whenever it's a player like Legette, where he's basically your only offensive weapon at the moment, and you got to feed him as much as you can in the offensive series to stick him back there to not only be tired, and it's just one more thing that he's got to do. You're also risking injury where he ended up getting injured on, a special teams play.
And it wasn't even a big hit. I don't know if he just got hit the right way.
Right.
Because it wasn't like a jaw-dropping
Some of it is that
hit.
he has gotten hit so much because he's been fed the ball so much that eventually the body's just going to break. Yeah. Or it's just going to feel dinged up, or it's just going to be extremely sore. You can only take so many hits. Whether it's freak play, strength and condition. I will say, so far, strength and condition wise, has been better the last few years than it has been in the past.
They're definitely getting bigger, but it's the same thing we had under Muschamp, where it's the soft tissue nagging injuries, or it's one thing if it's like a freak accident, somebody gets tackled, they get rolled and they tear their ACL, or they tear their ACL on the turf, like that's understandable. But it's like these soft tissue nagging injuries that we just can't keep up.
Some of it is depth. I mean, you're putting the same players out there constantly. There's not a lot of rotation on defense. There's not a lot of rotation on offense. Those same guys, like you said, they want them the best athletes on the field. Yeah. Special teams wise, okay, now you're taking defensive and offensive guys and putting them on punt return, kickoff. Yeah. So you're just sending out the same guys for basically every unit. Yeah. Eventually, those soft tissue injuries are going to come because it's just hit after hit after hit. Yeah. And unfortunately, depth is playing a role. It's going to get pinned on coaching, and some of it is. But eventually, when a guy is just constantly playing and there's no rotation, there's nobody behind him that's good enough or as good. Yeah, you're going to end up with those injuries.
And I mean, and honestly, looking where we were at when Beamer took over, I mean, it's like a 4 to 5 year rebuilding process where like you have to get players in there. Right. It's just unfortunately. With us, and you see this all across college football, it's this win now mentality, and coaches just don't have the opportunity to build a program up. It's all about win now, and if you're not winning or progressing the program, you're out of here.
Yeah, I think there definitely has to be some patience. I've always, as far as coaching before NIL, it's always been like, all right, a new coach, you need to give them basically 4 years. Yeah. And then you can really start to judge them after those 4 years as to whether or not they can cut it, because for some reason you got rid of a coach, or they may have moved on somewhere else. But that's basically their players that fit their scheme. Yeah. And so with Beamer, you got players that you didn't recruit. Yeah. For the most part. So unfortunately for him, he overachieved his first 2 years. So now there is no patience, because you can't take a step back. No. In a building process, if you overachieved, you got to at least meet that bar again. So that's why coming into this season, I thought 6 wins would be a good year for Beamer in where he was in part of his process of rebuilding. But as of right now, I only see one more win on this schedule. Maybe 2.
We got 2. I would definitely hit the.
But with the injuries, you don't know with that Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, but it's at home at least this year. The game against Missouri, it was just the same old. Right. Defensive line issues, defensive issues. I mean, it honestly looked like they didn't give 2 cares in the world to be out there against. And I get like. They're just constantly getting trashed on. They're constantly giving up yards. But listen, as bad as they've been, but they did a dang good job in the second half against Missouri.
The thing is like you got to go out there and care, because especially now with the NILs, most of these kids are getting paid similar to or more than the people that are taking their hard-earned money to pay for the tickets and support you. Yeah. And you come out and you play with this lackluster, just don't care. That's why I was like, all right, look, I can look on the screen and see you don't care. Yeah. It's not going well. Yeah. I'm going to go and, be with my kids. Yeah. Let's spend some time in something that matters. If this doesn't matter to you, then it's not going to matter to me.
And it starts on both sides of the line. If your offensive line cannot block, you can't run an effective offense. Right. You can't pass the ball effectively. You can't run the ball effectively. If you can't get any pressure with your defensive line, I don't care how good your secondary is, because there's only so much time you can hold that receiver intact without them running all over the place. I mean, you look at the first 2 years under Clayton White, we were either leading or at the top of the SEC standings and turnovers.
Right.
I don't think a single D. We may have 3 or 4 turnovers.
And those came in against Furman.
It's Furman. Yeah. Fumbles. It just you're both sides of the line dictate the way the game's going to go.
And I was thinking that the offensive line they were progressing and getting better, but then obviously now there's injuries. So. Yeah.
And let's not take anything away from Missouri. They're a dang good football team.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. And I knew coming in that we were going to struggle, but it was the lack of effort, I think, and just you could tell that nobody cared.
Yeah.
You know, watching them on the field, and you know, that's the worst part to me.
Yeah, they seemed to care in the second half, but unfortunately, it was just a little too late. And just when Xavier Legette goes down, Ahmarrean Brown goes down, you're now relying on true freshman Nyck Harbor, Omega Blake to be, and when your line doesn't give you time to pass or do anything effectively, you're not going to score because all our points came off field goals, 4 field goals.
That's another bright spot though, is that you are getting these younger players in, and they look good. Omega Blake has looked really good this year. When you get him the ball. You've gotten Nyck Harbor in the game. I think he played over 50 snaps this past game.
He actually led the way with 50 receiving yards.
Get him in the game. Get him. And get him the ball and get those game reps. He's going to get better.
And he even said he's more comfortable. He's grown into the position. Right. And I know this is like beating a dead horse, but that's what it's going to take.
Right.
They're not going to learn anything by just practice, just in practice, because you don't go the same speed in practice like you do in games.
And that's why we were saying all year, just get him in the game. And you finally get him in the game. And they've talked about just his work ethic, that he's the first one there taking reps before practice. He's the last one to leave, just trying to get better so that he can get on the field. And I think the more that they get him out there, it's going to help, especially when Legette gets back on the field. Hopefully it's this week.
Yeah.
If Juice Wells returns, at this point, I don't think he's coming back. I think just from an individual standpoint, why?
Yeah, if you're hurt and you can see that the season's lost, even though you can technically play, you may not be 100%.
Right.
Why risk it? Even I think he could still technically return next year.
Yeah,
but why risk it?
Yeah, he's going to the NFL.
Yeah.
There's nothing at this point that he could show in 4 or 5 games with a banged up offensive line that is not going to give Rattler enough time to really get him the ball.
Yeah.
At this point, unless they went on some crazy run, and there's a chance, that we could finish off 6-6 or something like that, play that Clemson game, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
sure. But the way it's trending, like I said, maybe 2 more wins, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure about Jacksonville State at this point.
Yeah, I know, and that kind of leads me into the next point I want to talk about is. Where do you think the Gamecocks go? Where do you think we go
if it was
from here?
me, I would fire Clayton White right now.
Yeah,
I would fire Clayton White right now if it was me, because at some point, you can wait till the end of the year and everybody says we're going to move on, but you have to make a point to your team that this is unacceptable. This play is unacceptable. This coaching is unacceptable, and we're making moves now because we've got to do something to salvage this season, and he's not cutting it.
No, it. I've been thinking about this since the game happened. And I just think it's a testament to, I guess, the type of person Shane Beamer is. I know Clayton White, I believe, is a very close personal friend with him. But like I said, this is year 3. You're a head coach of a major university.
Right.
Regardless, we're not a top tier in terms of football.
Yeah.
But you're still coaching a head coach in the SEC, the best 1-2 conference in college football. He made the whether Satterfield left on his own or not, he made a choice to move on from the offense coordinator. It seems to be everything is going okay with Dow Loggins, but you have to if you're going to bank your career on Clayton White, you're going to have to live with it. But I think
fire him now.
You have to make a change on defense.
Yeah, honestly, to me personally, I think it needs to be now.
Because I agree with you. I think it's I understand both sides, but it's you look at Arkansas. Arkansas was coming off a 7-3 loss to Mississippi State, and they fired Dan Enos. And I think I think that's what we should do, but I don't think that's what Beamer's going to do.
And, that's obviously him making that decision, but if you want to stay on that sinking ship, eventually you're going to drown.
Yeah.
And that's what Clayton White is at this point. It's not getting better.
Yeah.
And once people, wanted him gone a few weeks ago, it would be one thing if the defense showed some kind of promise.
Yeah.
But they've progressively gotten worse since then.
The second half against Missouri was probably the best half they've played.
And really some of that is probably just Missouri coasting at that point.
I think it was a little bit of both. For
so,
sure.
But the thing is you can't have a coach that says, all right, well, we make good second half adjustments. Yeah. All right, well, you're already down so far.
And he's not happy with it because all his interviews, whether it's mid-game, halftime, post-game, he's frustrated with the defense.
Words. That's all that is words because until he takes action.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, firing an offensive coordinator midseason I think is a little bit tougher because you do have to have somebody just calling play after play after play and scheming things up. It's a little bit easier, I would – not to say that calling defensive plays is easy.
Yeah.
But, there's probably 2 or 3 people on that staff that could do just as good at this point.
Yeah.
Get rid of him, move on.
And another thing is, and I see this a lot on social media, I think people are more frustrated with the concept Clayton White runs.
Yeah.
Runs a 4-2-5, but you've got 3 safeties out there, and you're asking a safety to play Eamon to play a position that he's probably not fit to be in, and that's no knock on him. Like he's a true safety. Him and DQ Smith, they're both true safety. So is Jalen Kilgore. But we've got DBs out on the team that can play the position, and it's just hurting us.
Right.
I mean, it truly is. But like I said, I think we're going to be okay. You have to allow
next year
4 to 5 years to determine. Yeah. But this is make or break time for Shane Beamer. If he wants to be a head coach, you have to make these tough decisions.
Yep.
In order to be a successful head coach. Look at Dabo from last year. Yeah. He saw that it wasn't working with Brandon Streeter, and he made a decision to move on from him. Now, it hasn't worked out the best, but we'll talk about that more later. But, yeah, if he wants to be a successful head coach, he has to start acting like a head coach.
Yeah, and I would fire – that would be my first thing. I would fire Clayton White.
Yeah.
But, again, he's not going to do it.
No.
He's just not. He's going to try and coast into the end of the season. But unfortunately, not only are you losing games, you're kind of losing some of your, dealings with recruits and, how they view the program. Because, again, if I'm looking at South Carolina right now and I see that we can't make any kind of adjustments coaching-wise, why would I trust that he's going to help me, as a player when we go there? So
yeah, and I think we're okay in terms of recruiting because, kids love Beamer. They love the program. I think most level-headed people know. Like we definitely overachieved last year. There were games that we won we had no business winning. The A&M game and the Kentucky game. You can X out the Tennessee Clemson because we did deserve to win those.
Right.
But we kind of escaped those 2 games against A&M and Kentucky last year. But we'll go back again this Saturday at Texas A&M. We'll get more of that later. Moving on to Clemson.
Another program that's slowly declining.
Man, I coming into that game with Miami starting quarterback out and Miami putting in a true freshman. Right. I don't understand. I don't understand how Clemson lost this game.
Miami's coming off 2 losses.
Yeah.
Coming into that game. Like we said, there's no real home field advantage, going into Miami. Nope. Clemson coming off their bye week. You would think that we're going to be extremely prepared. Cade Klubnik, 18 of 34, 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Not terrible stats, but
costly turnover at the end of the game.
Yeah, and just a terrible play at the end of the game.
Yeah.
But really and truly, it came down to Miami just shut down Clemson's running game. You have one of the best running backs in the nation, and he gets 44 yards.
Probably 2 of the best in the ACC with Maffa and Shipley. This is kind of similar to the Gamecocks. The lines. Clemson's offensive line continues to struggle.
Yeah.
5 sacks allowed, look like South Carolina's offensive line. And Clemson's defense.
Yeah.
They allowed over 200 yards rushing, and knowing Miami's not going to have like a really effective passing game. And they just got. There's one of the final drives. I think in the fourth quarter. I swear I think Miami ran it like 6 or 7 straight times, and they were successful 4 out of 5 times.
Yeah. I think the worst thing about it is and it's really for any team that, you come into a game like this, is you came out of your bye.
Yeah.
You came out of your bye week where you had basically 2 weeks to prepare for a team that had lost 2 games in a row.
That our losses to North Carolina is looking bad after they lost to Virginia.
And, just the boneheaded plays, it just doesn't look like a Clemson team of the past decade.
It seems like from what I've seen, and I texted Landry this, I was like, man, our teams are just struggling. And he said, no offense, we're in 2 different places. At least we have a winning record. And I think there's a lot of context you can put into that because, you 2 of your wins are against Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic. Those are games you should win.
Right.
Clemson's just a mediocre football team, and I think a lot of Clemson fans will agree with that. I've seen a lot on Twitter where they want a lot of their coaching staff addressed, especially on the offensive side.
And now you've got Dabo. I guess he's so frustrated with how the team's playing that he's taking it out on the fans, saying that maybe they needed to lose some games to lighten the bandwagon.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't understand. You have all these fans that have been behind your back.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you were a wide receivers coach who got gifted the position, and they stood behind you from the get-go. And then now the first time that it gets tough, it's just like, all right, well, we don't need y'all anymore.
Yeah. And, I mean, apparently their person, whoever is over their mental health, according to him, was on suicide watch.
That was
At
a terrible
least he
comment.
owned up to,
right.
And I think this is a thing that is very similar between Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney is they are very emotional people.
Right.
And I think they truly, truly love the football program that they are the head coach of, and they don't like seeing this any more than the fans do.
Right.
I think sometimes their emotions can kind of get the best of them because, I mean, it seems like every week people is quoting something.
Right, from
Beamer
both
says.
of them. Yeah.
But, yeah, this was a very disappointing loss for Clemson. We're both Gamecock fans.
Right.
I can look back and say, we're not looking at this from a Gamecock goggles.
Yes.
That's a very disappointing loss from Clemson.
Just nationwide, if you just browse Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, people that aren't Gamecock fans that obviously talk college football, they're saying the same thing. This is just a disappointing. They're not what they used to be. They at this point, you might be 4-3. That's mediocre. That's average. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there like that. You got a Colorado team, that won 1 game last year, and they're. I would say they're about just as good as Clemson right now.
And again, I don't think a record always tells you because, like I said, 2 of their wins are against Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic.
Exactly.
So, I mean, those are games they should win. Now, if it's like their 2 wins or 2 other wins were against, I don't know, like a Kentucky or somebody or they play USC or something, then you can say that. But when you're 4-3 and you're playing the schedule that you are, and this has always been a thing with Clemson and playing in the ACC. They could get away with it because they were just beating the behind off everybody. Now they're not, and I think they're getting called out for it.
Here's the thing: one of their wins too was against a Syracuse team that at the time, had an undefeated record, but their record didn't tell the story either.
Yeah.
So sure, you're 4-3, but in terms of how Clemson views himself, how the nation has viewed Clemson. They're having just as bad a year as South Carolina sitting at 2-5.
Yeah, and
the records don't tell the story.
Yeah, and I don't want to give this person but there's a radio guy in the upstate that I generally don't agree with. But I mean, he did make a good point where it's like South Carolina's got a very toxic fan base. Clemson, I think, is a little bit more realistic, and they're not like psychopaths. But yeah, It's definitely it's been a disappointing season because Clemson had all the hype after the ACC championship win. The Orange Bowl didn't go the way they wanted. Made a change at OC position. They hired the guy, the hot guy coming out of last season from TCU, and some people think he doesn't really have free reins to call.
He didn't at TCU, so that's why I was interested to see how he came into.
I don't think and we said this at the beginning of the season, I don't think he had play calling responsibilities.
No, they definitely were sharing those play calling responsibilities for sure. I mean, I think that's public. Yeah, I think that was public knowledge.
Yeah.
It's the same way in the NFL. You have an OC, but you have head coaches that call the plays. Yeah. You know, who's saying that an OC doesn't call in a play that the head coach agrees with?
Yeah.
But coming into this, obviously he was supposed to be calling the guy calling the plays. So, you know, I was interested to see how that was going to go. It kind of looked the same as every other Clemson offense before. But I think the most shocking thing is, like you said, the line play, especially for Clemson and their defense. It's always been that they were, you know, the D-line.
The front seven.
Right. As always, they've got the best D-line, and you've given up 200 rushing yards. And then, you know, another game of 200 rushing yards. And so, obviously, you're not what you thought you were there.
Yeah.
As far as the fans being more realistic, it should be easy for them to be realistic about a disappointing season because they have had 2 national championships, played for other ones. You know, they should have some realistic views on this, where South Carolina, we just want to win.
We're used to being bad. We should be used to this.
Right.
And, you know.
The bad thing is you had hope after last year. You know, that's the last thing we'll say about South Carolina.
Another thing is, and this has played Clemson all season, is fumbling the ball.
Right.
And they're fumbling in areas of the field that they can't afford to fumble it.
Yeah.
They had 3 turnovers total, like you said at the beginning of the segment. They only had 31 yards total rushing. Right. And, you know, some of that is from sacks.
Yeah.
But, you know, like you said, Shipley had 44 yards rushing.
Yeah. I don't understand. I've never understood subtracting rushing yards.
I think that's stupid.
College is the only level of football that subtracts rushing yards on a sack. The NFL doesn't do it. I'm pretty sure they don't do it in high school.
Yeah.
But in high school, who the hell knows what kind of stats they're keeping anyways.
I know, right? The only one I really trust is 2 of them.
Right.
And that's just because I've interviewed the coaches. But again, you know, it's another disappointing loss.
As far as changes, you know, what can Clemson change? Do you bench Cade Klubnik?
Let me ask you this, and I've seen mixed reviews on it. He took that final play into his own hands.
Yes.
Dabo came out verbatim and said this was not an RPO. He was supposed to hand it off to Will Shipley. Yep. And that's one thing that pissed Will Shipley off at the beginning of the season when he had that tiff with C.J. Spiller. Right. And I get it. He may have read it like the linebackers were crashing in.
Right.
But they've got athletic linebackers on Miami's defense. Yeah. And unfortunately,
even if you read it that way, most of the time on RPO plays, it's set up to that if you do pull the ball, you have the blocking.
Yeah.
In that scenario, everybody assumed that the play was going to Shipley, and you go completely rogue. You have 0 blocking.
Yeah, and I think
you put yourself out on an island, and he's not, you know, some lightning-footed quarterback. You know,
and he's not in a position to do that. Like, you will see that in the NFL sometimes. But these guys are also getting paid millions upon millions to do that.
It'd be one thing, too, if you had Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson who had won games and won big-time games, and they made that call, you know, after being there a year or two. But, bro, you've started like 6 games, and you're calling your own number in a season that kind of is hinging on you winning this game as to how everyone is viewing you at the moment.
Yeah.
You better get in there if you make that call, and unfortunately, he did not.
Yeah, and sometimes, like you said, some quarterbacks may have free reins to do that.
Right. He obviously did not.
No,
it was clear from everyone's comments after the game he did not have free reins to do that.
Yeah, some people are even saying and you even said this, they should bench him. I don't think
so. I don't. Well, first of all, I don't think you bench him because of that one play.
No.
If it's middle of the game, and he pulls a stunt like that, sure, bench him for a quarter or two, depending on how the game's going. Just say, hey, man, we don't do that. But at this point, I don't think that they have anyone that's like head and shoulders better than him behind him.
And that's not a position you just bench somebody. Right. I'm sorry.
No. If it's a running back, sure.
Or a receiver.
Exactly.
Because I know there's plenty of times, keep going back to Carolina, but there's a couple of times, I think last year, where Cam Smith got benched.
Yeah.
Because of his antics. So
you can bench a corner, you can bench a running back for a few plays because it's easy. You can take them out for a few plays. You got another player that's played the position exactly, but you don't have rotating quarterbacks. So no, I wouldn't bench him. He would be running a lot this week.
Yeah,
he would definitely be doing some after dinners.
Yeah, it's just 2 disappointing losses for the teams we cover.
It's not going to get any better for South Carolina
us
either.
As Gamecock fans, it's just putting that knife in a little bit deeper. It's just not going to get any better because our schedule doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
Looking at the schedule next year, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely not moving forward. You're adding in Texas and Oklahoma.
And we have Oklahoma next year.
Yeah, the only good thing about what the SEC is doing is it's going to mix up
rotating,
a lot more.
No more divisions.
Right, so maybe you'll catch a team on a down year, more than likely not.
I mean, but honestly, dude, if you look at the state of the SEC, even the East, because there's been years where the SEC East has not been good.
Right.
They're all coming along. I mean,
you can't hope for another team to have a down year. You've got to go out and get better.
Yeah.
That's the only way to make sure that you succeed as a program. You have to go out and get better. That starts with getting rid of coaches that aren't doing the job and aren't succeeding.
Hitting the portal.
Do it now.
Yep.
Recruiting well, hitting the portal, getting people in.
Yeah.
And just keeping the players that you have. That's going to be a big thing, is keeping these young guys. You already got one that came out today for South Carolina, a defensive lineman that
Xavier McLeod.
We don't know the full details, so not going to talk a lot about it, but a player did leave. I think someone
I don't think he left. I think he was kicked off.
Dismissed from the team.
Yeah.
I guess. Again, this is all of
it's all
hearsay,
speculation.
Hearsay at this
nothing
point.
Confirmed. But it's just there's been it wasn't a good recruiting class for South Carolina in terms of people getting in trouble because we had the issues in the offseason with the true freshmen, this D lineman, and whatever happened. I've seen a few things. I know he had a family member reply to something. I've read a couple things about the way they were in like high school and kind of how they approached this year. Again, it all could just be speculation. We don't truly know what happened. Wish them nothing but the best. But yeah, that's a position. He was Mr. Football last year.
Yeah.
Number 2 recruit out of the state of South Carolina last year. Just it's another loss in a key area for us that we don't have a lot of depth and production out of.
Yeah.
So, but that's just the life of being a Gamecock fan. Clemson fans kind of feeling our pain right now. But like I said, hopefully they can recover next week. Kind of getting in some national things. I'm going to do a 180 on you and not do our first segment. I'm going to switch it up.
Okay.
So USC lost this past Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Williams has not had 2 good games in a row. There's a gentleman that works, I believe, for Fox Sports. His name's Emmanuel Acho. He put a tweet out basically stating that
he should sit.
Yes. Okay. And essentially
he
it's
should
because
be selfish.
They have nothing else to play for.
Right.
In the day and age we have with NIL, these players getting paid millions of dollars to be at this school. What's your take on that?
He should finish. When you decided to go to college and where you decided to go to, you accepted NIL deals, yada, yada. You did that with the assumption that you would play, if healthy, the entire season, bowl game, national championship, whatever it was. That's the assumption that everybody was under when you agreed to that. You need to fulfill your obligation. Or if you want to go ahead and sit out, you need to be able to personally write a check back to all those people that paid you that NIL money, the commercials. Right now, Caleb Williams is probably the most marketed player in the nation. I mean, he's got a Wendy's commercial. He's got Dr. Pepper commercials. And all of that is because he plays at USC, and not because he sits out.
And I think he's in the Heisman House commercials with Nissan.
Well, he did win the Heisman.
I know, but normally it was all past Heisman winners.
Exactly. But so you're making all this money because you play at USC, not because you may be the first overall pick. And not only that, he's asking for ownership into whatever team drafts him. And before he even did that, he put out a list of 5 teams that he wants to play for. And if it comes up that one of those 5 teams doesn't have the number 1 pick, he's just not going to enter the draft. Like, there's so much surrounding him that's just negative about him moving forward. Like, you're basically saying that you're not going to play for certain teams. That's a negative. Now you're saying, and he hasn't said this about sitting, so you can't really put that on him.
No.
He hasn't played well here recently to say that you're a number 1 overall pick. But Emmanuel Acho, really, he's a clickbait. He does the same thing with the Cowboys. He does the same thing with certain players in the NFL. They take one person and they drive it home every single week. They did it this past week. I mean, that's just who he is.
Yeah.
Speaking on Emmanuel Acho, the Cowboys didn't even play this week, and they had to compare Jalen Hurts' game to Dak Prescott, who didn't take a single snap because he was on the bye week.
Yeah,
but that's just Emmanuel Acho.
I think it sets a bad precedence because, like, if you're a GM, president, team owner of an NFL team, and you see a player make that decision, he's like, screw this, our season's not going. Yeah. We're not going to make a
what's to say he doesn't do that to you in the NFL?
Exactly. It sets a bad precedent, and we don't know the ins and outs of all these NIL deals. Like, are they paid on like a per game basis? Are they fronted this amount of money to play X amount of games? Like, these players want to be treated like professionals. Yeah. You have to act like a professional athlete. You're getting paid. Yeah. And you do that crap in the NFL, you get fined.
Yeah, that would be like
if you don't want to show up, if you hold out because you're wanting a new contract. Yeah, guess what? You're getting fined.
That would be like Bryce Young is not going extremely well for the Panthers right now. To say, listen, I don't want to risk getting hurt running out there. We're obviously not a good team. Yeah. I'm just going to sit it out for the rest of the year. We'll try this again next year. Yeah. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, at this point, it's a job. It was a job in college football before because other people's lives depend on. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game. Other people's lives depend on it. These coaches' lives depend on how well they coach these players and how well those players in turn respond and play on the field. Yeah. When the players don't play good, coaches lose their jobs. Kids have to move. X, Y, and Z. And for you, it's not just being selfish in the fact of letting your team down. You're letting families down. Yeah. Fans that put their money into this. Like, for Emmanuel Acho to say that is just wildly
I don't think there's
ignorant and obnoxious.
I don't think there's a single person that agreed with him.
No, and who would? Yeah. Again, he just says things in the moment to drive clicks. Yeah. He doesn't really care if he's right or wrong. He just says it. He finds things to say. He says them. He posts it. And then it gets the clicks, it gets the comments, and it drives his name because just like right now, we're talking about him.
And I think if somebody sits out a bowl game, I think it's a different scenario depending where you're at, what you're playing for. But you're still in the middle of the season. We've got 5-6 games left. Yeah, and you just quit on them. Yes.
Yeah, I don't mind players sitting out. I wish that they wouldn't in bowl games. Yeah, but I can understand it. It's a one-game thing that whatever. But at this point, no, you got half a season to go. You still got a lot to show because even with the half a season you've played, two or three games of it, you have not played well.
Somebody put a stat up of him facing the teams they normally face, and then when they're facing good defenses, and he's a shell of himself. Right. Notre Dame, not Rutgers, excuse me, Utah. USC always struggles with Utah for some reason.
But he was the same kind of at Oklahoma. I mean, he wasn't going out and winning them national championships at Oklahoma.
Guess what? Even if he comes back, they're in the Big Ten next year.
Yeah, it's they
play defense in the Big Ten.
Exactly.
They don't do it like they do in the Pac-12. Last segment before we get to the Carolina Clemson games for this weekend. I think this is Jim Harbaugh's last year at Michigan. Yeah, I think he's with these two scandals, whatever you want to call them. If Michigan wins a national championship, he's in the NFL next year.
If Michigan wins a national championship, he's gone. If they don't, he's gone.
I think so too.
And there's going to be enough spots, I think, in the NFL.
Teams will fire their.
I think it's a lot easier for him, especially coming from the NFL and being successful when he was there, to go back to the NFL and just deal with, all right, we can sign players. I don't have to go out and recruit. Yeah. I can not have to worry about kids, being in class and doing this and doing that. Yeah. Just for someone like him, it seems like it's just a lot easier to be in the NFL.
Well, and especially with these two, I guess, sanctions that are potentially coming. The stuff where he was suspended 4 games over him buying a cheeseburger. Yeah. Somebody stupid. I guess you could say this one is a little bit more, not scandalous, but a little bit more serious. But like everybody said, every team tries to steal signs. Right. And
no other coaches have come out and been like, yeah, we need to, penalize him for this. Like Deion Sanders came out, they asked him about it, and he was like, look, you can steal as many signs as you want to. You still got to stop it.
Yeah. And honestly, like the more that keeps coming out, I really and truly believe this Michigan staffer, he just went rogue.
Right.
Because it came out today, he has like a 500-page manifesto that him and some friends came up with several years ago on how they can make the Michigan football team better. This is just a guy that loves Michigan football.
Right.
And because after it came out today or yesterday, after the first college football playoff rankings were released last year, this guy bought a ticket for every game or every team except TCU.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like I just can't imagine because these coaches watch tape.
Right. There's nothing that they're going to learn from this guy filming somebody on the sideline that they're not going to learn on. I mean, hand signals, sure, but college teams change that up pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Because they know, because like I said, every team is trying to steal signals, and you can kind of start to get it within the game. Most teams have double signals. One signal. Yeah. You could have one play that has 6 different signals in it.
Yeah.
Or a different color or a different name, you know.
It's also...
I think, again, it's just this guy. It's nothing to do with Harbaugh and the staff.
It's created another conversation that Matt Rule was talking about this, why they need like whatever that system is the NFL uses in college, where it's like they radio in the play into the quarterback's ear.
Right.
And they, like Matt Rule even said, like in the NFL, you're calling in at like 3 plays to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And in college it's not, but apparently everybody's against it. So, but yeah, I think Harbaugh's going after this year.
Yeah, I agree. Back to the NFL.
Back to the NFL, yeah.
Let's make some picks real quick for 2 terrible teams. South Carolina is going to travel to Texas A&M. They've never had success there, and they're not going to have success this year. They're 14-point underdogs. It's a 12 o'clock game. It's a weird crowd. The Texas A&M, that whole thing that they do the night before games, extremely weird.
Colt.
If you've never seen it, go look it up. I'm not sure what it's called.
It's the 12th man. It's called the Midnight Yell.
The Midnight Yell. Yeah. Go look it up. It's extremely weird. But none of that's going to matter.
It's a Colt.
The Gamecocks are going to lose by 28.
I guess the only thing is we've just kind of reached the F it mode in this season. And I feel that's kind of what we did last year. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same result because we felt like we'd hit rock bottom after the Florida game last year. Came out a week later, Tennessee game. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year. I think we cover the spread. But again, our biggest weakness is our offensive line, and Texas A&M's defensive line is insane.
Yeah.
So I honestly, God, I feel bad for Spencer.
He's going to be running all day.
Yeah.
They're going to have to dial up plays or just quick passes.
Yeah.
But yeah, use Harbor more. At this point, let's just get some freshmen in and get them some reps.
Yeah, I've got Texas A&M to win. Unfortunately, I hate picking against the Gamecocks. And then Clemson plays at 2 o'clock on the CW after the newest episode premiere of The Flash.
Yeah.
The CW. How the mighty have fallen.
Right, and right before that, I think Sesame Street comes on.
People just
maybe some reruns of Dawson's Creek or something like that.
People will just be finishing up their morning cartoons on the CW. Then you can watch some football.
Exactly.
Best of both worlds.
I think Clemson, I don't know, man. They're kind of trending down. NC State, though, isn't great. Yeah. But Clemson always has kind of struggled at playing at NC State. But I think that they do win this game. I don't know if they cover the spread.
Yeah.
But I think they win the game.
Do you have anything to say? Speak up.
Nothing to say.
Yeah, just like our football seasons. But yeah, I kind of close up everything. Both the teams we cover are kind of in just weird. Where we normally are.
Right.
Clemson's they're in an area and territory they're not used to being in.
Exactly.
God, I hope it changes, and I hope it changes soon for us. Hope it doesn't change for Clemson.
Yep.
But we'll be back next week to recap the games. Please like, share, subscribe. Put down in the comments. We appreciate all the support this season. Hopefully we end the season. Well, God, dude, we still have 5 games left. Yeah. So hopefully
there's time for both programs to make a run and turn it around.
Yeah.
I have more faith in Clemson turning around than I do South Carolina, but I think they'll both continue on this trend that they're on.
Well, good thing for Gamecocks, even though we're losing, we play better at home.
Yep.
So
Last four is at home.
After this week, all our games are at home. Clemson after this week, the next 3 games are at home. Then they finish in Columbia. Yeah. So we'll see.
The thing is, before the end of the season, South Carolina in the middle of the year always tends to win a game that they shouldn't. So they're not going to win this game, but it wouldn't shock me if they did.
If we were playing at home, it might be different. But we'll see y'all next week. Thank y'all.